Hello, I'm Jonathan Womack, and welcome to this edition of Community Insider. Stay tuned. Coming up, we bring you to the Creightons General Store in Coalmont, Tennessee, where we'll take you to a store that's been around for over 100 years, and the history is unbelievable. That much more right here on Community Insider. Stay tuned.
Community Insider is brought to you by
Dr. Pepper. Good for life, good for the community.
Community TVTN is brought to you by Security Federal Savings Bank, proudly serving the community we call home.
High-quality leads with prolific internet marketing and invigorating web design services that will energize your business. We are SiriusSEM. Call today or visit us at SiriusSEM.com.
Welcome to another edition of Community Insider. Join us as we travel Middle Tennessee, uncovering history and experiencing the adventure of unique stories and events coming to you inside your community.
Hello, I'm Jonathan Womack, and welcome to this edition of Community Insiders. We bring you inside your community, and today we're actually in Coalmont, Tennessee, beautiful Coalmont, Tennessee, with Miss Lynn Wofford, and she is part of the Creighton family that has been around in this part of the woods, neck of the woods, for over 100 years. And what I mean by that is, in behind us is this historical marker, state marker, that was placed earlier in this year, commemorating and really telling a brief portion of the history of this beautiful community store that has been in operation for over 100 years. Tell us what process it was that got the marker in place, because I knew this was a part of your family. You owned it for many years,
Right.
but what really got this sign in place?
You know, this store was amazing to the community in this mountaintop, and I felt it needed to be commemorated. Certainly, since it is so old, over 100 years old. And I applied for application, sent in an application for the marker to Nashville. There is quite a process you have to go through, a lot of homework you have to do, a lot of documentation is required, and then you make the application. It goes up before a board of directors. If that board allows you to have the marker, if they approve it, in other words, then you end up being sent additional paperwork, and you have to proofread everything and make sure the info is correct. And then ultimately, last thing, they will have you pay a certain amount. At this time, it was $1,450 to get a state historical marker. This property had been modified to a degree, so it was not eligible for to go on the National Register of Historic Places, and that's why I opted for the marker instead.
And we're talking about modifications off camera. We was talking about that you can remember, even when you took over the store, some of the primitive restroom.
No restroom really at all. Really. We'll just say, to be nice,
right.
There was never a restroom here. And there was never a phone. There was never heat and air conditioning. There have been a lot of changes in the last few years. The last proprietor of the store was my first cousin, Sam Creighton, very well known here on the mountaintop and well loved. And when Sam passed away, we thought that the legacy of this little country store had probably gone with him. But fortunately, I was able to acquire this and remodel, kind of repair would be more accurate. And once we did that, I rented it out, and it was ran as a cafe for 3 years. And now James and Ellen Rogers own it. Just sold it to them, and I'm thrilled with what they're doing with it.
James Rogers, the current owner, and also the one who is basically putting in, once again, the use of the kitchen.
Yes.
Where today my family's getting served
Yes.
catfish, there's hamburgers,
That's
there's
right.
several things on the menu.
Wonderful.
So whole families can
Pulled pork,
come in
barbecue, everything.
and get whatever they want, right?
They can. And they serve basically 3 meals a day, 7 days a week now. So they have different people coming in to prepare breakfast, lunch, and supper. And Sam Creighton and the 2 generations before him that ran this store would just be thrilled that this is benefiting not just the community of Coalmont, but other areas here on the mountaintop too. Because it was ran by 3 generations consecutively, and it went from being a general merchandise store to more of a grocery store. But when I was a child, there were several little stores around, and they didn't try to compete with each other. They tried to kind of have their own unique things to sell, and I thought that was great.
That's awesome.
I just thought that was great. And they were in very close proximity. Coalmont's a really tiny town.
Yeah.
But I just felt that this store was so interesting because the building supplies, well, it's a Sears and Roebuck building, by the way. So
Interesting.
the building supplies came up on the Mountain Goat train, which ran right behind the store and property here. And the supplies were brought up, delivered here, and it was built on site by William Creighton, and then his son Robert Asa, or Bob Creighton as he was well known, took it over after William Creighton passed, and that was in 1945. My Uncle Bob ran it from 1945 until 1975 when he passed away, and Sam Creighton ran it from 75 until 2012. So long history.
Yeah, and I've got to give a shout out to one of my good friends that sort of told me about this cool little place in Tennessee, Jim Sartan, which the Sartan family goes back to a sheriff, Mr. Sartan, probably around this area. But a big shout out to Jim for telling us about this incredible little place, but beautiful, with just the beauty on this mountain, and also what we find out inside. In just a little bit, we're going to go inside and actually show you just some of the antiques. Now, Miss Lynn, we're going to walk right over here towards the train tracks, because a few things has changed. Not really what they called on the square, but just in the circle of the community here.
Right.
A few buildings has been torn down, new buildings have been placed. We'll find y'all right over there in just a few moments. Stay tuned. Miss Lynn, now on what some would call a square, but really just this area of the community, right in front of the Creightons Store, things have changed, including the emergency medical service building.
Yes.
That wasn't there always. What was there?
In that area, there was a company store. Everything here, most of the houses, the one that the Creightons lived in across the road, for example, were all built by the Sewanee Fuel and Iron Company. They ran the coal mines in this county and on top of the mountain, several counties actually. So the general store that was original to Coalmont, the town of Coalmont, was built there where the emergency ambulance service is now. It was a big building. It supplied everything, all types of feed for livestock and farm implements. It was groceries, the dry goods, clothing, work clothes, oh my goodness, just it goes on and on. It was also the post office, it was everything to Coalmont was in one building here. At that time, there was a hotel here in town. In that direction, just above the old bank building that's behind the extension offices here, there was a little hotel up on the hill that was just charming, that burned down when I was very, very young, and it was called the Wigwam. And it would hold, that would be where the workers that would come in to build the company houses, things like that, would stay, all of them, at the Wigwam. There was a little tea room around the corner and down the road here, and they would take their meals there a lot. And then, of course, once this was built in the very early 1900s, they never had a cafe, but they would make sandwiches, bologna and cheese sandwiches, and things like that, something very simple for the people. And that was done throughout the history of this little store. So there was more here. The post office sits over in this direction now, but it's been moved. It was originally part of the company store. Then the bank building was built soon after, and there was the bank on one side and the post office on the other. They shared that building. So it's changed.
Wonderful history, Miss Lynn. And then what's cool is you're still carrying on this history to the next generations, which is good.
I love that.
We pronounced it Creighton, but it's Creighton that they pronounce around here.
That's only here that it's called Creighton. You go anywhere else in the country and you'll hear Creighton, but yes, they pronounced it Creighton. They did. And another fact about this little store that I want to mention, in running this for over 100 years, there was never any tobacco or any alcohol sold ever in this little store.
Wow.
So I think that's pretty cool.
That is
And
cool.
it always had a little pot-bellied stove. That was the only heat. Opening up the windows and doors was the only air. But people would come here and sit around that little stove, pot-bellied stove, and sometimes they would be whittling, but most of the time they would just simply be chatting and laughing. And the owners and proprietors of this store were wonderful to keep a lot of laughter, and just make people feel good about being there. So there were a lot of stories and probably a lot of lies told around that little store too. And I understand that that's the way it was down at the company store before my time.
Gotcha. So several little places like that. Something we've got away from our communities, and that's what this show is about, is to bring us back inside our communities and get you out of the house into your community. This is a beautiful setting for such as that. You can bring your whole family here. Now, the pricing is very reasonable.
Yes.
You can get a good meal. Where else can you come find this kind of history with some good catfish, cheeseburgers, hamburgers, and a whole lot more? Pulled pork. And well known for barbecue, aren't they?
Well known for barbecue.
And is that the same Sam that was kin to you? I saw the Sam's Barbecue.
Sam's Corner is the name of it, and that was after my cousin Sam, who was the last owner and proprietor. Yes.
I got you. So,
yes. And it's right here on a corner, so what better name?
Yeah, picnic tables. You can eat outside or inside. And speaking of inside, we're going to take you inside, where you'll find other hard-to-find antiques that is only found here in Coalmont, Tennessee, and unique for this store also. They've done a good job. The new owners have done a good job filling those shelves.
Yes.
You had mentioned earlier about those shelves, how unique they was. We'll go inside and let you show us those.
Sure.
Stay tuned, that much more coming up.
One of the unique features of the store are the way the shelves were built. Back in the day, they had no tools the way we do now, and so they hand-notched strips of wood, both at the rear and the front of the shelves, so that they could be moved and repositioned at different heights. I thought that was pretty cool, and these are original to the store. They were all the way down this side of the building and all the way down the other side.
Now, several antiques that we find in here, but there is really one main one that's original to the store. Is that right? Tell us a little bit about it.
Yes, there is, Jonathan, and that would be up here on the top of the cooler. The scale is from the 1800s, and that was original to the first owner of the store. In other words, bought that, and it actually has been recalibrated so it could still weigh produce and meats and so on. But that was what they would weigh their deli meats and cheeses and things like that on always, which they sold, I'm sure, a lot of, especially second and third generation store did. Pot-bellied stove is no longer functional, sadly, but it is the second generation pot-bellied stove in here. They had one prior to this, and it was just broken down too badly. So many years ago, they replaced it with this one. We have it fixed to where they can't really build a fire in it now because a building that's well over 100 years old would be in serious trouble if something went awry. So it is there just for looks and to remind people that for over 100 years, people from Coalmont and all the surrounding areas came here, sat around that little pot-bellied stove and told stories and laughed and just enjoyed themselves immensely. I want to thank a lot of people, Jonathan, for helping with this remake of the store, so to speak. For one thing, there were so many people in this little town of Coalmont, Tennessee, who came here and helped voluntarily and gave their time and their energy to us. It was amazing after Sam Creighton passed just what took place here. And there are just so many, I couldn't possibly name them by name, but I appreciate it immensely. And then this historical marker, just the fact that I was given help by the agency in Nashville on applying for it, and the fact that it was approved just thrills me because it's nice to have something here in this little town of Coalmont that commemorates its history, and it's a pretty rich history. The town of Coalmont is located in the very center of Grundy County here on the Cumberland Plateau. So that's why the emergency medical facility is here, the ambulance service, in other words, so that it can go in all directions and serve the entire county. And so this little town should have some significance, I think. So we appreciate everything that everyone has done, and we appreciate you letting people know, Jonathan, about our little hometown of Coalmont.
We hope you're enjoying the program, and we want to hear from you, maybe for some show ideas or for more information about what we do and how we can tell your next story. Give us a call today at 931-409-7151, or simply just email us at communitytvtn, all one word, at gmail.com, or check out our website at www.communitytvtn.com. We would love to hear from you. Send us your email, communitytvtn@gmail.com.